Well, good morning and welcome to Bumper Radio. I'm Dave Riccio here along with my good friend Matt Allen, and we are here to help you with your car every Saturday from 11 to noon right here on News Talk 92.3 KTAR. We're here to help you with car questions, car problems. Maybe you're looking at a car purchase and need some advice. Mostly your overall car repair experience. The best way we know how to do that is to educate you on your car. So to get involved with the show, all you got to do is give us a call at 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTAR. And today on the Bumper to Bumper Roadmap, fact or fiction as always, open phones. If you got a car question, maybe a repair you're looking at, maybe you got the list from the shop, maybe you want to know what to do with that list of repairs that you might need. That could be a topic. So anyway, today we're talking motor oil specifically. And I dragged in a 23-year veteran, mechanical engineer of the oil industry. He came kicking and screaming. I said, you got to come teach these people about oil because I don't know anything about oil.
You're stealing my thunder, Dave. I was going to introduce him.
All right, go ahead.
So Dave drug in Cameron Thomas, who's a mechanical engineer by degree, and 23 years in the oil industry, and you're with Petro Canada.
Yes.
And it's great to have you here. Thanks for spending your Saturday with us from California and taking time away from your family to help our listeners learn a little bit about oil. And if it goes anything like the past hour when we had breakfast, we may just confuse some people.
No, thanks for having me, guys.
There is so much about oil that I did not know until this morning, and really the reason I want to have Cameron on is what is the most common question I think that people want to talk about: synthetic oil or conventional oil, and what should I put in my car? And before this morning, I was pretty naive as far as the information out there.
Well, and it's confusing, but not only what oil should I use, but do I really need to use the oil that they say I need to use? You know, now you have a GM car that in 2000 and let's say 10, you had your run-of-the-mill General Motors car, and the same car in 2011, now it requires an oil that's 3 times the price as the last car had, a little bit different design in the engine. Do I really need to use that oil? And I think, you know, Cameron's over here nodding his head, and the answer is yes. Yes, you do.
Yeah, the answer is yes. Basically you want to kind of follow obviously the OEM's basic recommendations, but there are different things you can do to improve the performance of the oil. There's basically mineral oils, synthetic blend oils, and full synthetic oils.
And one of the things, and you're the only, I'm going to call you a tribologist in the room.
All right, I'll only let you call me that.
Don't call me that name. But there's base. All oil comes from base oil. So when you guys get crude oil from the ground, it's distilled, and the different things come out of it, whether it be food grade oils, and the base oil that goes into transmission fluid or engine oil,
antifreeze, diesel fuel, gasoline. What are some of the other?
That's right. So basically, Petro Canada is a fully integrated company. So we go out, look for the oil. We extract the oil, we refine the oil, then it goes downstream into the fuels and the lubricants. But basically, when you take crude out of the ground, you're basically sending it to a refinery, and then it goes into a distillation tower. And then once it's in the distillation tower, not to get too technical, you got the lighter weight products go to the top. You have your gasoline, your jet fuel, your diesel, etc. And then the mid-cut is your lubricating oils, and then the bottom is your asphaltic-based products. So the base oil is the basis of the finished lubricant.
The finished lubricant. So the motor oil that you're going to pour in your car, or the automatic transmission fluid that you're going to pour in your car, comes from base oil. So they get this base oil, and then from there they put additives to it to make it do all the things that it's going to do.
But where I got the biggest takeaway this morning talking was the grade, because you have a base oil, and I likened it to a passing grade in school. Mm-hmm. If your base oil that we need to use that qualifies to then become motor oil, you've got to add your packages, put your additives in it. But there's a lot of manufacturers out there, and Cameron says Petro Canada is the most pure because you're a food-based or a food-grade oil as well. But you can still have a base oil that passes the test. That's my likening. Well, it meets the certification. Well, you can meet the certification with a C and pass, or you can meet the certification with an A+. So there is a difference. But the problem the label's not different. You just passed.
That's right. So API, the American Petroleum Institute, has categories for the personal vehicles and heavy-duty vehicles, whether it's spark initiated or combustion. Combustion.
So diesel.
Yeah, diesel. So for passenger car, you have the API designation of SM. And then for heavy-duty trucks, you have the designation for CJ4 or C. And the base oil makes up 85% of basically a finished lubricant. So like you said, when you pass and you get the API donut and it says SM or CJ4, that is the minimum spec. So a lot of companies, when they design an oil to hit that minimum spec, you're getting just a C grade, basically. And there's oils out there that far exceed the minimum requirements. So like we talked about earlier this morning.
Yeah, I guess you're the valedictorian. You didn't just get the diploma. You're the valedictorian
right.
of the oil.
That's
okay,
right.
good.
So you have three different categories, basically. You have mineral oil, you have synthetic blends, and then you have full synthetics. And we talked about there's a definition for mineral. There's a definition for a full synthetic, but it's a very big gray area for synthetic blend.
So synthetic blend may be 90% mineral oil with 10% of full synthetic oil. In the mixture, that's the blend. Well, it's still better than the base mineral oil, but by how much, we don't really know.
That's right.
So blend is not defined by API or not at all. It's not really defined.
It's not really defined. So a mineral is 100% mineral, and it's generally, it can be a Group 1 base oil or a Group 2 base oil. When you talk about a full synthetic, American Petroleum Institute defines it as either 100% Group 3 or 100% Group 4, and it can be a mixture of 3 and 4, but that's the definition of a 100% synthetic product.
And really the big difference, because when I heard the word synthetic for the first time, I thought it's fake, man-made. You know, it has nothing to do with that. It's all about the purity of the oil. So there's a purity scale, and then there's also a viscosity scale. So it's been sifted down more times in order to become more pure than just that base mineral oil. So.
Yeah, I mean, we could throw Rob and Mark out from 1 to 3 and stand here
and talk about oil
all day long and not touch on all of it. There's just so much to do. So, I mean, a lot of the questions. Go ahead, Cameron.
The synthetic part of the definition is, and the reason why they call it a synthetic is because it is manipulated. A mineral has a lot of impurities, so there's sulfur, waxes, aromatics, and things like that. To get it to be a synthetic, it is manipulated so that all the molecules are the same size. So when you have the same size molecules, it creates a stronger film strength. And it can withstand higher temperatures and lower temperatures, and it can withstand the heat a lot better.
And the film strength is what's important, because if you just picture in your engine, there's a tight, I mean, thousands and thousands of inches between bearings, a cam bearing or a crankshaft bearing or the walls of a piston in a cylinder. And it's that layer of protection on that film, or the quality of that film, that is what protects your engine.
Right.
So.
Well, up there first this segment, I thought it would only be appropriate to talk to Mike. He's got an oil question. Go ahead, Mike. You are on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Oh, hold on. Hello.
Hey, Mike, go ahead. You're up.
Hey, I had a very specific question. We run off-road vehicles, and about CV grease. We have real big 934 style CVs, and I thought the oil guy might give us an idea. There's a big debate back and forth about what percentage of moly and whether or not to run graphite, different brands. You got any info for me?
Yeah, he does. He's over here, Mike. And one thing I'll ask you to do, Mike, too, your connection's a little rough. If you'll follow us up with an email, we'll make sure that anything that he's not able to answer for you, he gets you in an email, okay?
Yeah, great question. Most of what I deal with is the heavy-duty equipment and the commercial side. So moly basically is a extreme pressure additive that we put in oils and greases. So moly is, in this particular instance, when you talk about grease, you're talking about a dry lubricant. And the reason why you have moly is that when the lubricant or the grease is squeezed away from the load zone, then what's left behind is the dry lubricant, which is the moly. But the way we manufacture greases now, there is two schools of thought, and I don't really think any one of the schools is wrong. You can either not have moly and go with an extreme pressure and look at the viscosity, because, again, the number one recommendation you want to look at is the viscosity, how thick it is, whether it's an ISO 320 or 220 type of oil. Then the other school of thought is you can put a dry lubricant in it like moly. Caterpillar likes moly, generally 3%. So it's kind of, no school of thought is really correct, and both products can be, really good in terms of resisting wear.
Good. The question, too, most people may not understand, but I'm into sand rails and off-roading and stuff, and he was talking about 930 axles. That's a Porsche 930. That's a turbocharged car. And it's the CV axle or the rear axle that they're using in sand rails or off-road trucks or sand cars, whatever it is, and those things get abused. So, Mike, hopefully that helped you. And again, follow us up with an email at bumpertobumperradio.com, and if you have any further questions, we'll get you in touch with Cameron.
Well, let's go with Brad in Gilbert on a 2012 Highlander with an oil question. Go ahead, Brad. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hey, thanks, guys. Like I said, I just got a new Highlander, and I was reading through the owner's manual, and it says the recommended oil is a 020. And I'm thinking, man, I've never heard of anything that thin on the viscosity side. And the heat we've got down here, is that still going to be adequate?
This is perfect for Cameron.
Oh, yeah.
And we had this I had this just about the same conversation at breakfast, because I have a 2010 Tundra. And in order to get the mileage on the sticker, at least in 2010, there was a service bulletin that put you back to using 020, even though the manuals or the oil cap says 520.
So did he say that the recommendation was 5W20 from the OEM?
No, 020. He's never heard of it. Yeah.
I like Brad's question because people are buying new car sales are up, and people are going, 020? Are these people crazy?
That new fandangled oil, I don't need that. Just put in 1040.
Never.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's really it's like a mental barrier when you start seeing these lower viscosity oils, and the reason why you're seeing them is because obviously a lot of the OEMs are trying to get fuel economy, and the lower the viscosity, generally you can get better fuel economy. So it allows them to put the cafe sticker on the, it allows them to increase that number of fuel economy, miles per gallon. But I want to kind of answer the question in going back kind of backwards in time in the heavy-duty engine oil arena. There was a time that everyone just used monogrades, and that's just a single grade. They used 30 weight or 40 weight, depending on the temperature. And then there was a push in the 80s and the 90s to go to multigrade. So they wanted to go to 15W40, which is now the standard. But when a lot of the heavy equipment operators heard the 15 weight, they were like, there's no way that can work. It's too light. I'm going to damage my engine. And fast forward to today, you have engines that, getting 1 million miles on an engine is what's expected. And they're using a 15W40, and the OEMs basically design the engine for the viscosity that they recommend. So there's 3 basic things that they're looking for, the OEMs, when they build an engine that relate to viscosity and oil. It's speed, load, and temperature. So those 3 characteristics are how they're going to design the film strength that they need in the particular car. So speed, load, and temp is the main thing. So if the OEM says 0W20, I wouldn't change the upper end of that at all. What you could do is, if you're interested, you could do a 5W20 if you think you're really running in hot temperatures, or you can use a synthetic blend or even a full synthetic, but I wouldn't change the upper end, which is the 20 weight of that product, because that OEM, he designed that equipment and that engine to run at that type of viscosity.
So it's been through R&D. We don't want to outthink the engineer who designed the thing. So 020, that's what it was made for. That's what should go in it.
Well, and again, he was on a Sequoia, and that's what I'm using in my Tundra, probably the same engine. And for the fuel mileage, you need to and picture it like the engine trying to pump mud or trying to pump water. If you start that engine up cold and you've got a 1030 or 1040 in it, something's going to give. That engine wants to force that oil through the oil galleys, and either the gears are going to break, it's going to blow, or in the oil pump, it's going to blow a seal out, or it's going to force the oil through. So you've got to have that lower viscosity on the bottom end so that it runs freely. And it not only has to do with the lubrication, but it helps the engine warm up faster, helps it meet emissions requirements, fuel economy.
Yeah, remember the OEMs, they want their engines, whether it's Ford, Chrysler, GM, they want their engines to last long. They don't want to give you a recommendation that's going to sacrifice the longevity of that engine.
Well, Brad, thanks so much for that call, because I think everybody can learn from that, with these newer vehicles and newer viscosities. Let's go with an ever-patient Tom in Mesa on a 2005 Dodge Ram half-ton. Go ahead, Tom. You are on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I've had this truck for about a year, and lately it's been real mushy when I get in it and drive it. And I mean, when I put it in gear, it's mushy when I'm driving out of my neighborhood. When it warms up, everything seems to be doing okay. It's just in the morning, and I'm not quite sure what to do. Now, my buddy, who's kind of a backyard mechanic, fun to hang around with, he's saying that just put a can of stop slip in it.
Okay,
he swears by it.
You're talking about transmission feeling mushy. Okay.
Not really engaging first thing cold in the morning.
It's not a solid engagement, but I've been told use a can of stop slip. It fixes everything. What can you tell me?
Right. Have you ever seen a check engine light on that thing at all? Hey, Tom, have you ever seen a check engine light on that thing at all?
Yes, I have. It's on right now. Have
you had that looked at or scanned?
Yeah, I had it scanned at one time. A few weeks ago, it was an 868, I think.
Do you know if it was a code related to the transmission, or was it an engine failure code?
No, that is a P0867. That's more than likely half-ton. That's a 45 RFE, I believe, is a transmission that's in there. And it's a line pressure-related code. And I'm going to answer your question for that transmission, and then I'm going to stomp on your bad advice that you got as far as transmission stop slip. That's it could be a very expensive mistake. But a line pressure code in the 45 RFE is going to be one of two things. They're real common for losing line pressure sensors or for them getting out of whack. If the computer doesn't know what good line pressure is, it can't operate the transmission right. The other thing that's real common in that particular transmission is there's an accumulator cover on the valve body that likes to crack and bleeds off pressure. And it's going to be more noticeable when it's cold. Well, I think the advice of his friend was it's got hard seals, and I've heard that. Pour in some stop slip, and that'll fix it up. Again, that could be a $2,000 or $3,000 mistake.
That's as dumb as putting brake fluid in the transmission.
As dumb as putting brake fluid. It's not going to rejuvenate the seals, and we need to diagnose the problem, see what's wrong, and then go fix it. So it doesn't sound, because it gets better in the check engine light, we may very well just have a bad sensor or a leaky accumulator cover. Those are the most common things for that transmission.
And if I'm hearing you right, Dave, your point with the additive, your symptom could be that of a hardened or bad seal, but it very well may not be. So now you go treat a condition that you don't have, and now you take a seal that was just fine. Now you've ballooned that thing up, and you've created a problem that you didn't have. So.
Well, and the thing with that is we're kind of past Grandpa's cough syrup. We're not working on 82 Chevrolets, So there is a little more science behind this. Let's find the problem, let's diagnose it, and let's cure it right versus throwing something at it that may do more damage than good. So thanks so much for the call, Tom. Long answer short.
And it's a common question. So Roger from Phoenix with his 07 BMW, patiently waiting. Another oil question, and we're lit up on the board with oil questions. So Roger, go for it.
Hi, I have a 2007 40i, the BMW, and I want to change my transmission fluid, but the dealership says that they recommend for me not to. It's a lifetime oil in there. Well, is that true?
No. It's funny. We had that conversation again this morning, talking about the different fluids. Dave's the transmission expert. We service a lot of BMWs. We're a ZF or ZF, as they say in Canada. Speaking Canadian. Transmission distributor. And I actually have a service bulletin from ZF that says that sticker and that statement from BMW is wrong. Category wrong. There's a service bulletin. It's a communication error or a mix-up in translation. And that transmission should be serviced at 62,000 miles. You need to pull the pan down. That pan, I believe, it's the pan and the filter is one unit.
One assembly, correct.
Make sure I'm right, Dave? Yes, it's one assembly, as I thought. And then you really, really need to use the ZF brand fluid. It's made for that transmission.
Well, here's my point when it comes to transmissions. Do I service? Don't I service? Transmissions fail 4 to 1 over engines. But yet we all go in at 3,000 miles, 5,000 miles religiously and get our oil changed. But but not transmission fluid. And transmissions are failing and engines aren't. I think in days past it was engines and, transmissions were probably about the same. But the transmission is now taking the load off the engine. So we're keeping a more consistent RPM. We've got more gears. We've got 8 speeds now, 9 speeds now. So there's nothing, you can't over-service a transmission. I mean, it's cheap insurance. I do believe the oils are getting better and they're lasting longer and you can get away with more. But the main thing I like to do is get that filter changed.
Yeah, and the filter will tell you a lot when you look inside of it, see if there's any other problems. But get that transmission serviced. And again, we could all get boxing gloves in the room between the manufacturers and the oil makers. And Dave wants to play Fact or Fiction now. But it's marketing, too. So keep that in mind.
It's time for Fact or Fiction.
You love
I love it. I'm excited because I'm going to put you on the spot because you don't know the answer. You don't know what I'm going to ask. And I have the authority in here, the mechanical engineer with 23 years experience in the oil industry.
You.
Yes. The W, and we were talking about viscosities earlier, and that's thickness of the oil or weight. The W in 10W30 stands for weight. Fact or fiction, Matt? Ooh.
Play the Jeopardy music.
Fact.
W stands for weight.
You're trying to make me look dumb on purpose, aren't you?
I am. Cameron's over there shaking his head with disbelief because he thought he was coming on with the real car guy.
I told you that question. He told me the answer. He wants to slap me. It's in the book.
Cameron, fact or fiction? The W stands for weight.
That is fiction. Actually, W stands for winter.
Winter.
Yes.
So when we have multi-viscosity oils, for everyone who's out there, when someone says 0W20, so 0W it has a 0 weight viscosity at that cooler.
At that cooler standard temperature. So basically the way they make a multi-grade oil is they put a additive in the oil. We put an additive in the oil. It's called a viscosity index improver. And when that viscosity index improver at the cold temperatures, it balls up and it almost becomes like a BB. And then when it gets hot, it expands and it becomes thicker and it becomes the 40 or 30 weight. So 10W30, that's what's happening with the viscosity index improver. At the lower temperature, it's balling up, it's becoming very fluid, so to speak. And then when it gets hotter, that polymer expands and it becomes thicker, and that's how you get a 10W30 or 10W40.
Cameron, I really, really, really want to thank you for coming in and straightening that out.
Whatever. Hey, the thing we talked about as we're coming in, we were having a similar discussion in the elevator on the way up was, well, if it's thicker, why isn't it coming out in blobs? So you can't picture it as being thick. It's the ability to move or to flow.
That's right.
It's not necessarily thicker.
Yes, what I love is when I go to a car service shop or something like that, and they stick their finger in the oil and they say, "Oh, it feels like a 20 weight or it feels like a 30 weight," and I'm like, they don't even know they're talking to an oil guy.
That's what they call their thermometer. Can't you tell the viscosity with your thumbs? Let's go with Ray in Tempe. He's got a 2012 Fiesta, and he's got an oil question of all things. Hey, Ray, go ahead. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hello, hey, thanks for, I just had a real situation yesterday. I was in a hurry. I had my mobile mechanic say, well, pick up the oil. I picked up Mobile 1 generally, but it's 520, but I picked up a 530. He said there shouldn't be any problem there, but is there a better oil than this Mobile 1? It relates to a small 1.6 engine car, 5-speed.
I guess my first question there probably is the answer to that question. My question back to you is, what does the 2012, what does the manufacturer want you to have in that car? What's the owner's manual or the oil cap say?
520.
520. Well, then Cameron probably knows, but I don't think 530 is going to hurt the car, especially not in the summertime. But now you put 530 in there and you go live in Flagstaff or Utah or somewhere, there might make a difference.
Was there a reason why you're trying to go to 530 versus the 520?
I was in a hurry, picked up the wrong one.
Well, it's not going to hurt anything in the short term, but yeah, like I said earlier, you want to stay with the OEM recommendation on the higher end. Now, we also, I'll put a plug in for us. Petro Canada also has synthetic oils, and we have the 5W30. Our line of products is called Supreme, and it's available through Pioneer Distributing. They're our only distributor in the state of Arizona is Pioneer Distributing, and you can get the oil, any of those oils there, the synthetic oils, all types of viscosity. But basically, with the synthetic oil, what you're getting is a far superior class of product versus the mineral and the synthetic blend. And so if you're doing anything that's extreme, or you're looking for extended drain intervals, or you're looking for a little better fuel economy, that's when you go to basically an API base oil group 3 or 4, and you can go into a synthetic. It's a great product. It's a great class of product.
Yeah, see, and I don't necessarily like the synthetic oil to extend intervals, because human nature, we tell you 3,000, you go 5. If you put in synthetic to drain it to extend your interval, and we tell you 5, you're coming in at 7. So I like to view the synthetic oil as protection. It's insurance. Later on down the road, the car overheats, you lose the radiator hose. That have the difference between having synthetic and a conventional oil may be the difference between whether or not you have an engine failure.
And for me, I'm a hard driver. I know 2 speeds. Full throttle and full brake. And so do I want the same oil that's protecting grandma's car that's protecting my car? I'm using the engine at twice the capacity. So
yeah, and one more thing about synthetics and synthetic blends, especially since I deal with a lot of heavy equipment operators. The synthetic and the synthetic blend, if you have 1,000 or even 500 or even as small as 100 units, and you do want to extend drain intervals, there's a tremendous amount of savings that can be achieved. Now, when you're talking about a personal vehicle, you have to be careful with extending drains and things like that depending on how you're driving. But when you're talking about commercial applications, the application and the savings that you can get with a synthetic blend or a full synthetic, it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
If you're a contractor and you've got a fleet, air conditioning fleet or something like that, you can really save some big money.
Well, let's slip in Gary on a 2007 Toyota RAV4. Go ahead, Gary. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Okay, hi. Hey, here's a sweet dilemma. I was at O'Reilly the other day, and Valvaleen is doing a special on this stuff called Next Generation. They offered it basically for free because they're going to give you a $20 gift card if you buy 5 gallons of it. My wife's car has 75,000 miles on it. The oil's to be changed every 5,000. So what do? Do I go with that, or I go with their Valvaleen 75,000 mile oil?
7,500 miles, what I think.
No. The car has 75,000 miles on the engine, and the Next Generation, they're offering it basically for free if you pick up a jug of their recycled oil. But because the car has 75,000 miles on it, right next to it, they have an oil for engines with 75,000.
Right, that's the high mileage oil is what they call it, and I think that the only difference in the high mileage oil, there's just some additive that does a little bit of swell sealing and stuff like that. Right. So, what do you think about those? I don't want to call anybody out specifically, but a regenerated or a recycled oil like that Next Gen.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the Valvaleen Next Gen oil, but just taking a step back, looking at it, it's really about what you want to achieve and how you drive. So if you drive long distances and you're kind of hard on your vehicle, then you want to consider a better oil. And I would look at a synthetic blend type of product or a full synthetic. The reason why I'm saying that is because there's 3 classes of oils out there. There's mineral oils, there's synthetic blend, and there's full synthetic. What determines which one you get is basically how much you want to protect your engine. Like Matt said, it's extra insurance. If you don't want to go with the extended drain intervals, it's definitely extra insurance for protection, and it also gives you better fuel economy. Now, 7,000 miles isn't, you can at any time, it's 75,000, even 100,000. You can go to a synthetic blend or a full synthetic. It's not going to have the classic problems they had years ago in the 80s and 90s where you had leakage and stuff like that. There's additives in the synthetics and the synthetic blends that are going to not allow that to do that, and the tolerances are different, and the way the OEMs are manufacturing the engines, that's not an issue anymore.
Well, that's a good point, because I always wondered that. I remember when Mobil 1 first got big on the market, we'd do an oil change on a vehicle that had been conventional since day one. And at 80,000 miles, we went Mobil 1, and the thing was leaking from every crevice.
Well, and we talk a lot about marketing in the show and the manufacturers. And just a quick, funny story about the NextGen. When that first came out, we were introduced to it at our shop through Napa. And it didn't go so well. It was too cheap. They had to raise the price. Everybody thought, oh my gosh, this is too inexpensive. It can't be any good. They actually raised the price and they sell more of it.
To make it sell, for sure. Well, thanks, Cameron, for coming in to help our listeners understand synthetic oils versus conventional oils. We're glad you all share your Saturday with us. Remember to start a relationship with a great shop, bumpertobumperradio.com. While you're there, Matt and I are lacking friends on Facebook. Be sure to like us. It's giving me a complex, actually. So thanks for Peter for putting on a great show. He's Matt Allen, and I am Dave Riccio. Remember, never, never text and drive.